All right, we are joined here by these, 2/3 of the Mindless Wrestling Podcast. We got DJ Mentor, of course, the host, and Bonnette again, 2 weeks in a row on the show. Rob has turned to the frequent flyer of this podcast now. I think he's been on the show like 4 times this year, and if not more.
Yeah, I know, man.
At least. What's up, gentlemen?
Keeping it real, man. Working and working.
Well, you have been on the show in about 2 years. About 2 years, right? Yeah.
It's been a little over a year. We
2 years.
joined the Chairshot Radio Network. Actually, it's a year ago this month, and I know we were last on with you well before that.
Yeah, May 21 actually is when is on. Yeah, and your beer wasn't that epic at the time.
No, I didn't start growing this thing until September of 21.
Well, we're not here talking wrestling. Actually, surprise enough, we're actually going to rank our top 10 comedians of all time. This idea spawned really from a conversation. I don't know. Was it Rob and I talking, or was it something random? And then you guys jumped into the thread, and we just
you QT'd something on Twitter, and it was someone's top 10 list. I'm not sure whose it was,
right?
But they were. I don't think either one of us kept the list. I know I didn't. Right. And I'd have to dig through about a month's worth of tweets to try and find the response.
And that's a nightmare in Elon's world.
Pretty much. And then Rob, you said something, and then I said, I could talk about this type of thing, and that's when you suggested having Rob and I on the show, and we could actually make an episode out of it.
Well, my theory is always like anything is podcastable. Anything is.
Oh yeah, anything's a topic.
You know what I'm saying? So what we're gonna do? We're gonna run a top 10 list. We're gonna go power ranking style. People familiar with this podcast know, like, I love power rankings. And so we go 10 to 1, we go 10, the 9, and 1-1. We'll go 1-1, like, in like guessing the snake draft order, I guess you want to call it, somewhat. Okay. But before we go there, you guys did mention you have honorable mentions.
Yes.
You want to shout out to DJ. Give me a couple of honorable mentions you had in mind.
Couple of honorable mentions I had, and this was kind of unfair because I grouped 2 different sets of comedians under one banner. One was the Kings of Comedy. Okay. Cedric, Steve Harvey, D.L. Hughley, Bernie Mac, absolute influences in the community, and just, in the entertainment industry in general, huge careers for at least some of those guys. Another one was the blue collar comedy guys, Jeff Foxworthy, Bill Engvall, and Larry the Cable Guy. Larry the Cable Guy for sentimental favorites that we can talk about later.
Yeah.
They just kind of round out my list. Tim Allen, Ellen DeGeneres, Wanda Sykes, Andrew Dice Clay, Whoopi Goldberg, Robert Townsend, and Chris Rock.
Chris Rock. Interesting. Chris Rock on your top 10. Interesting.
When I did my
I'm
top
okay
10,
with that for record.
Yeah. When I did my top 10, I tried to go, because you wanted to do power ranking style. And so I was trying to not infuse some of my personal favorites in there. But unfortunately, that's kind of how it happened. And while I like Chris Rock, he's not in my top 10 personal favorites and or most influential.
He's not my top 20, to be honest, or top 30.
He made it in my honorable mentions.
Yeah, I'm not even a fan of Chris Rock personally. Like, he's to me, that's a whole other story down the road. But but I'm shocked because most people put Chris Rock in the list. I actually respect the fact you put him in top 10. I like that actually. So. Rob, what about you? You have a couple honorable mentions you want to?
Yeah, so I'll stick to ones that DJ didn't already mention. I've got Martin Lawrence because of basically from hosting Def Comedy Jam, so many people came through there, and he made that show. Mm-hmm. Bernie Mac came through there. Bill Bellamy, Cedric and D.L. Hughley were on there a lot. There, a whole lot of other people came through there, and he was the host of that show. And him hosting the show. I mean, the comedians are all funny, obviously, but him hosting the show put it at a different level, and that's in addition to, of course, his own career, as both as a comedic actor and a stand-up.
Right.
I put Lenny Bruce in the honorable mention because, like, he's one of those people you have to put him on your list, according, but I've never actually seen him do anything, so.
Right.
Yeah, I want to give him respect. I want to respect him for the career that everyone vouches for. But I can't speak.
I did the same thing. There's a couple on my list who I've never seen their comedy. However, I can't deny their influence on the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got Jim Carrey as honorable mention.
Okay.
Just because of how big he got at one point, and you know, I mean, he was a stand up, and of course, and he was just a big time comedic actor. Yeah, I don't know that I would put him like as a top 10 all time, you know, or whatever though. I got Red Fox honorable mention for the same reason named Bruce. I saw Red Fox on Sanford and Son. You know, I saw him in a couple of movies, but I did not watch any Red Fox stand up like ever.
You watched we watched Sanford and Son though, right?
Yeah.
Who didn't, right?
Yeah, that's the
I mean,
thing, like,
this is the cool thing too about this podcast. Like us three are, for the most part, in the same age range. I mean, I'm younger than both of you guys. I'm 43. DJ, you what? 47, 46?
49. I'll be 50 in September.
Oh, okay. And
I'm 49.
yeah.
40.
So what kind of almost that same range in a sense.
Yeah.
Like we know the old school, we nostalgia and all that. So we kind of have the same idea. Rob, anybody else? Anybody else wanting to mention?
Well, I have what I call the O.J. Simpson Award. I give it to Bill Cosby.
Oh God, Jesus.
The O.J. Simpson Award, basically, because you got to acknowledge how great he was, but you know, fuck that guy.
Yeah, I had a couple guys on my H in my HM that you mentioned. Martin, I have in my HM. Red Fox, my HM. I also had Sam Kinison also my HM. Didn't really watch all of his stuff, but the stuff I did see in retrospect, phenomenal, ahead of his time. You know, I also have Michael Blackson. You remember Michael Blackson? He was the funny African comedian. So it was on BET. Bit of a one trick pony though, but he's kind of he's funny as hell. So they'll have those four guys with my honor mention. I won't lie, as much as it was, I was trying to do the best of all time. It's hard to take out your favorites. Like the favorites are already favorites, and it's hard to, my number one is my number one, and people gonna agree with that, but I really believe he's the funniest guy I've ever seen, in my opinion. But we'll see how that goes. All right, so number 10, here we go. And since you have been on the show a long time, you go first. Lead off.
Okay, number 10 for me was Dave Chappelle, and I only put Dave Chappelle. I know a lot of people probably feel he should be higher on the list. If I've actually watched anything more than the Chappelle Show and actually watched his stand-up, I probably might have. But again, not being a comedian that I know a whole lot about, I do understand his cultural significance and his significance on the industry. That's how he made it at least to number 10 on my list.
Okay. I actually like that. And I can relate in a sense too, because Chappelle was someone, and he's on my list. Obviously, I'll reveal that later on when we get there. Was someone I learned to appreciate. I got older. His stand-up style didn't really care for initially years ago when I was younger. As I've gotten older and a lot more broader to thinking in the world at large and more exposed to things in the world at large, he's now been someone I can actually, his voice matters more than most. So I can relate to you in terms of that situation. All right, number 10 for you, Mr. Bonnette.
Okay, I got Chris Rock at number 10 because unlike you guys, I am a fan. At least I was at one time. I was a really big fan of his. He's gotten a little, I don't know, he's gotten a little sour grapesy for me lately. Like, look, I mean, he should have taken the L from when Will Smith slapped him. I mean, I
don't blame him. I mean, even though I can't stand the guy, I mean, I don't blame him for feeling the way he did.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but because he did a comedy special and he talked about it a lot, and it wasn't funny. It was.
Oh, no, the last one, right?
Yeah,
I still need to see that. I haven't seen it yet.
It just, I mean, it was. He sounded really bitter. I mean, it's like, okay, like I get being bitter because I might slap you, right? But I mean, go talk to your friends about it. Call them an asshole in private or something. I don't know.
So this is probably the only way. Last time we talked about Chris Rock, because none of us having a list outside of you. My biggest issue with Chris Rock for years has been the only reason he's funny to me. He can only be funny by making fun of people. He's not naturally funny, at least to me anyway. Like to me, he's only funny when he's making fun of people. And to me, it's like, okay, we get it. Make fun of him, make fun of her, whatever. But at some point, it's okay. What else you got? And to me, that's
I can see this. Kind of like how I feel with Andrew Dice Clay. Andrew Dice Clay had the nursery rhymes, which were funny, but beyond the nursery rhymes, I didn't find Andrew Dice Clay to be, gut busting hilarious.
Right. My number 10 is Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney is not only a great comedian, but he's probably even more well known as a great writer. Behind Richard Pryor and a bunch of other comedians through the years. He's someone that I didn't really get to appreciate till I got older. and more adult and seeing the world at large, you know. And also we lost a couple of years ago, but he's to me he's a genius. Really, think about it, too. The way not just the way his jokes, but the way he delivers the jokes also too. To me, I don't appreciate as well. So Paul Moy's my number 10. So all right, number 9. Go ahead, DJ.
This one's probably going to be a little bit controversial, and again, I'm trying to
Bill
rank
Cosby?
this. Huh?
Bill Cosby.
Not yet.
He's there.
That's a teaser. Not yet.
Look. The man is funny. Okay, he's just he.
I tried to separate
for the other reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 9 for me was Roseanne Barr. And we have to admit that Roseanne Barr was influential for female comedians back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. She kicked open a lot of doors. And to be honest, politics and her personal behaviors aside, she had one hell of a run. The Roseanne Show was the number 1 show on TV for years. And, her stand-up comedy routine did really well for a while. And, she had a run, and that's why I included her on my list. Not that I was a big fan, but again, trying to kick personal bias out.
No, that's fine. She had impact, obviously. Her TV show was huge in the 90s. I was never a fan of it, but you can still acknowledge,
Right.
how the bigness. It's like also people in wrestling, you may not like Hulk Hogan, but he's on Mount Rushmore. Shut up. Deal with it. You know what I mean? It is what it is. But yeah, I actually respect that, actually. Okay, number 9 for you, Rob.
Different female comedian. I got Joan Rivers.
Okay.
I like from all the talk show stuff and from those Friars Club roasts where like she would take it and give it right back to all the dudes in the room. And like, back then that was not something first of all, women were not invited into those rooms a whole lot as it was.
Right.
And, she got in there and she traded punches with all of those guys.
Right.
And, then she was, for a long time, she was the de facto fill-in host for Johnny Carson for a long time. And, at one point, I think you probably say she was the best female comedian. At one point, I don't know who you might put my head her now, but
in the 80s, definitely, I would. Yeah. Who else are you putting in there? I mean, Whoopi was good, but she wasn't on that level at that point. At least in the comedy world, in the same way. No, Joan Rivers was huge. On TV show at the time, turned talk show at the time. Yeah, no, she was a trailblazer for women at that time as well too. Yeah, I like that. By the way, I'll go ahead and tease it now. I don't have any females on my list, which actually kind of shocks me. But one more HM have to acknowledge, I'll mention, Lisa Lampanelli. You know who she is?
Lisa Lampanelli is hilarious. I love her on the Comedy Central roasts.
Yeah. In fact, I probably should add her in my top 10, honestly. But if I did it again, as Steven says, this is fluid. I could change it next year.
Yep.
My number 9 actually is going to shock some folks. You may know who he is. My number 9 is Pablo Francisco.
I recognize the name.
I'm not familiar with him.
So he's the guy that's all the voices and stuff. Spanish guy.
Okay.
Really, really good. I saw him live back in 2012. He is really, really good. And I've seen a couple of stand-ups, almost through the years. He's really, really, really talented. And like I say, he's great live. And he's never really done much beyond just the stand-up stuff. I don't know if he knows any movies. If he's done movies and stuff, hasn't done anything really significant. But in terms of my personal, what I've experienced and just seen his work, he's up there. His stand is one of the best stands I've ever watched. Obviously, not lack of mainstream success, puts him a little lower on the list, but at least in terms of personal favorite, he's definitely my top 10. So that's for me. Pablo Francisco, number 9. Number 8 for you, DJ.
Number 8 was Red Fox. Red Fox influenced people, and the biggest reason, and I didn't know this for years, he influenced people for generations, including one Andrew Dice Clay. There was a joke, because my buddies were big into Andrew Dice Clay, and there was a joke that Dice used to use. It was, how did this go? He said, she said, give me 12 inches and hurt me. So I fucked her twice and hit her in the head with a brick. That's a Red Fox joke. And really? I saw that years later. Red Fox was doing stand-up, And it's similar. He says, she said, give me 12 inches and hurt me. So I did it twice and hit her in the head with a brick. He didn't use the F word.
Right.
But yeah.
Dice so, always adding extra later. Dice always adding extra. I get it.
Yeah, pretty much. And then again, I grew up watching, Sanford and Sons. And I absolutely love that show. And, for that reason, he had to make it on my top 10 list, not just because I have fond memories of that show, but because he did influence a generation of comedians.
By the way, Rob, DJ's more welcome to barbecue. More welcome to barbecue for the record. This dude has more black cred than most people I know. I'm not even joking. It's amazing. All right, number 8 for you, Rob. What you got?
Rodney Dangerfield.
Ooh, I like that. Well, classic, baby.
Because him, like the whole self-deprecating, I get, the whole I get no respect, and then he goes through a whole, this whole routine of going through just a million different ways where basically he's a loser and that type of thing. And he was just, a master at that type of thing. And look, he made a lot of movies. He had a really long career, and look, he also came up at a time where, like, he had to change his name. Because Jewish people using ethnic names was kind of a 50-50 proposition. I mean, some kept their names, but some changed it because, for obvious reasons. So then, like, he had a really long run, and we worked with all different people through all different generations. And he was one of those people, like, if the Johnny Carson or whoever needed somebody to just come out there for 8 minutes on the Tonight Show, he could just go out there and he just kill it. Like,
Yeah, he was so funny. I enjoyed his work also too. He probably should be my HM as well. I guess I'm still doing the list. I'm actually still tweaking the list little by little. I was like,
he's still writing it as we go.
I'm actually no, I'm not writing. I'm actually tweaking it, like the order.
Okay, I got you.
Was that right?
If you ask me to do this again, like a month from now, I might, like, the bottom 5 might be totally different.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Because and that, as you guys mentioning names also too, I'm like, she might crack my top 10 also, or he might crack my top 10 also.
Well, I totally forgot. Martin Lawrence is on my honorable mention list. He's the one I missed. He
was actually on my original 10. When I first did this like a month ago when we first started talking about this.
Because I forgot about the Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah, there we go. Number 8 for me is actually I just moved down one spot. Jim Carrey. I did see his early stand-up stuff back in the day, but to me, it's the movies. Obviously, some of my favorite movies of all time are Jim Carrey movies. I can to this day, 30 years later, still quote Ace Ventura: Pet Detective from first start to finish. to this day, okay, 30 years later. But also Liar Liar and all the great movies he's done through the years. I mean, he's been a big imprint in comedy as a whole. I kind of missed him doing stand up from way years back, but obviously the movies pay the bills. I get it.
Yeah.
So number 8 for me, Jim Carrey. All right, number 7 for you, DJ.
Rodney Dangerfield.
I love it
for all the reasons Rob said. Also, he had Dangerfields, which was on HBO, which introduced me to a whole bunch of fresh up and coming, stand-up comedians. This is where I first saw Roseanne Barr for the first time, saw Sam Kinison for the first time, saw Jerry Seinfeld for the first time. And there's a whole sidebar I could go on Jerry Seinfeld. But yeah, absolutely. Rodney Dangerfield and Back to School stands the test of time. It's easily in one of my top 5 all-time favorite comedies.
Oh yeah, that movie's awesome.
Yes,
absolutely. We're showing our age here, guys, for the record.
Hey man,
if you ask these kids today, Rodney Dangerfield, who's that?
Who's that? Anybody under the age of like 38 is listening to this going, who the fuck are all these people?
Exactly.
Right.
Well, my list only gets worse from here. So
oh no,
I'm going to alienate everybody in a minute.
All
right, we're on number 7, right?
Yes,
number 7.
Yes.
So, Robert, you got number 7?
I got Paul Mooney number 7 for all the reasons DJ said. And just as a note, I think I said this in one of the group chats. I mean, like, you had to prep people if they were going to see Paul Mooney. You had to, or particularly, look, you had to prep if you had any, you had to prep your white friends if they were going to see Paul Mooney.
Yeah, he goes heavy into the foot race. He goes heavy into the race. Heavy.
Yeah, You do not send your white friends to see Paul Mooney and not know what they're getting into. Because man,
You know what's great about today? Like Apple Music now, you can find these all their work now on like Moody and all the other great comedians. They find all their stand up work now available on demand, which is so fantastic now. You know, and Paul Mooney when he passed away, I remember doing a binge. I think was it 2 years ago he passed away? 2 years ago,
I think so.
maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very recent. It was during COVID. I did a little bit of a binge. After that, man, that guy's a fucking genius, man. That's for sure. All right, number 7 for me, Steve Harvey. I mean, to me, for you to be the greatest Family Feud host of all time on a show that actually has some really great hosts, and I can still say you're number 1 all time for starters, my favorite game show of all time is amazing. He's someone that growing up didn't really. I thought he was okay. He's funny, but he was never like my top guy. It's gotten older, starting to appreciate him more. Some of the stuff. Very mature comedian. I don't know. I just think he's hysterical. And to me, Family Feud is what did it for me. Really, for me, put him in my top 10 because not only that, they allowed the show to get a little raunchier. I don't know if you guys noticed recently. It's gotten a little raunchier in recent years because of him. They allow more like adult suggestive topics on there now in comparison to the years past. And to me, he just fits so well, man. His personality in that show just flows. Like
he was
nothing.
a natural. Like when they first announced him on the show, I'm like, because I didn't know a whole lot about his stand-up. So I was like, okay, I knew who he was,
right.
But I was like, I hadn't heard a whole lot. But then, first couple years, I'm like, I don't know. But now the dude kills it. Every time he's out there, he's so natural, so fluid. He's awesome.
And then my mom just this weekend put me onto his new show on I don't know if it was ABC, whatever, but it was on Hulu. Judging Steve Harvey or Judge Steve Harvey, where he takes cases and stuff and he judges it. It's pretty funny. It works out. It works well. So I got in my top 10. All right. Number 6, I think. No, number 6.
Yeah,
that's you, DJ.
Don't shoot me, Bill Cosby.
Okay.
Just because, again, we got to set the stuff aside. And if we're just looking at career, we're looking at influence, we're looking at, power rankings. Bill Cosby has to be in the conversation. It was his Bill Cosby himself was one of the first stand-up routines I was allowed to watch because it was fairly family friendly. He was rather clean. And, it was I was probably like 12 or 13 when that came out. So, being that young, that's what I was allowed to listen to.
Right.
And we had a lot of that. And then the Cosby Show goes without saying. It was a huge, huge thing. And then he had that show, Kids Say the Darndest Things, which again was a huge hit for him.
Yeah.
He had the Little Bill cartoon series for kids that was amazing. The Fat Albert and the Gang, just so many things that Bill Cosby was involved in over the decades. There's no way I could not in clear conscience have left him off my list.
No, I respect that definitely. He all the stuff aside, he made a tremendous impact on TV, on stand-up, on other, and then not only that, influence on TV, not just beyond him, but also other shows, spin-off shows, Different World and Fat Albert and all that.
He proved that you could have a family-friendly comedy that wasn't raunchy or full of sexual innuendo. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but he proved that it could be done and still be a number 1 hit TV show.
And for 8 years.
Yeah.
That's about towards amazing, and a black family in that time too, which is fantastic.
And that.
Yeah. All right. Number 6 for you, Rob.
I got Chappelle number 6.
All right.
Because I think out of all the kind of Eddie Murphy disciples, I think he's the best one.
Yeah, I can roll with that. I mean, like I said, I told you earlier about Chappelle. It was me. He's on my list, obviously. The TV show obviously made me put him over for me.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it's and the thing was, and of course he stopped doing this show because he thinks about kind of from what he was saying, he looked around on the set and he thought the people, like the stuff that was supposed to be a commentary on stereotypes and and things like that nature, he saw too many people laughing at the stereotypes. That was the funny part.
Yeah,
and it just kind of it kind of made me want to stop doing it, basically.
Right. $2 balls do that. They'll a lot of money too back then as well. $50 million.
Yeah, but I mean,
lot of
He
money.
left a lot on the table.
Yeah, but those so many of the skits from that show are still getting quoted now, like the player haters ball and the racial draft and
that shit's so funny, dude.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
That's
that,
right.
and then the Rick James.
Rick James, bitch.
One of the most underrated ones also actually is the Mad Real World.
Oh yeah,
because I was a big Real World fan back in the day, and how they switched dynamic from having one black person with all white people, like 5 black people with one white person. Who thinks of this shit, dude? Seriously. So
but
genius.
it's gutsy, and that's what made him so good.
Yeah, and it's funny. The show is now 20 years old, and it's still.
Oh yeah, it's still
stands of time now.
It still works. Yeah,
it still works now. Number 6 for me is Chris Tucker. So talking about guys naturally funny. He's naturally funny.
Okay, I can dig it. Yeah,
to me,
he's coming to my radar.
Yeah, he's just. I mean, his early work before he went to movies. On BET and those older. You mentioned earlier, DJ.
The Def Comedy Jam.
There you go. Thank you. He was one of those. He was one of those.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
I mean,
he was on Showtime at the Apollo too, wasn't he?
Yep. Yes, he was. Yeah,
he was. That's why I think that's the first place I ever saw him was Showtime at the Apollo.
Yeah, his Michael Jackson impersonations are hysterical.
Yes.
Rush Hour. I mean, some of the stuff he did with what was the movie we did also in '97? He played the kind of like the not trans, but kind of
it was the Fifth Element.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
kind of weird, but kind of funny too. Also.
And that was an absolutely brilliant character.
Yes.
Like if you get past certain people having an uncomfortable feeling about the character, it was absolutely brilliant.
Especially back then too. Also in that time, it was still kind of passe to do that. He touched some, it was good. But yeah, but to me, he's always been naturally funny, which is great. On Friday,
just recently, he was on the Inside the NBA set with.
Yeah, I watched that.
He just walked out there and just went on a bunch of riffs, and it was hilarious.
Yeah, it's hysterical. Yeah, and then some of Friday, he did Friday. I mean, so it's great. All right, number 5, top 5, DJ.
All right, we're to the top 5 now. Number 5 for me, when you talk timeless, when you talk career, when you talk influence, you've got to talk Robin Williams. When I think of his body of work and the things that he's done, obviously starting off as a absolutely just frenetic energy stand-up comedian, and then taking that into acting and going not only comedy but voiceover work, obviously with all the stuff, all the animated, the Aladdin movie, but then the serious roles that he took on, just absolutely amazing career.
Yeah, he's genius. We lost him too soon.
Way too soon.
The movies he did was fantastic. His stand-up was great. He's someone I've ever appreciated more and more as I've gotten older. Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. 5 for you, Rob.
Okay, this one. Damon Wayans.
I like it.
Yeah.
Damon did a lot of. Well, he did the sketch show on Living Color.
Mm-hmm.
He did movies, and he did sitcom too. Right, so he hit all the bases there. And he, and also he wrote and produced a bunch of stuff, and and then and just like bringing up Robert Townsend again. Robert Townsend has like a tree, basically.
That was his tree, right?
He put the Wayans family on TV,
right?
And then they put, he also put Tommy Davidson and David Allen Greer on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, they got Living Color. They put Jamie Foxx and Jim Carrey on TV. So there's a whole, like he's at the root of a whole lot of this stuff. And, I think, and I think Damon is, to me, the best performer out of all the Wayans family. And so I haven't seen pretty much everything, all the different things that he's done. Yeah, I think he's definitely, he's number 5 for me. Yeah. And to me, like when he's going, he's just like laugh out loud, just hilarious. I mean,
wasn't it originally when in '88 when they did I'm gonna get you sucker, that Keenan Ivory was a lead Wayans first, and then after Living Color that kind of changed that kind of the order, pecking order of like important Wayans.
Yeah, because Keenan was like the director also.
Right,
so, wasn't he like the better looking of the bunch too?
Keenan Ivory.
Was Keenan the good looking one? Not that the other guys were ugly, but there was definitely one
bald.
guy who was.
Well, he was the bald one, older and bald.
Okay, no. I'm thinking of the other one then.
I think the other ones, Sean and Marlon.
Okay, I may have been thinking of Sean then. I know one of them was a bit better looking than the other two.
It's like a damn.
But yeah, I mean, and they, and I think Damon and Keenan, they both did some writing for Eddie Murphy on some stuff, and so. I mean, so he touched all the bases basically. Back,
right.
Behind the scenes, in front of the camera, on stage, sitcoms, movies.
Yeah, no, I like, yeah, that's a good one. Very underrated too. Also, to this day, all of them, all of them, every weigh-in, underrated. 5 for me, Cat Williams.
Oh yeah,
it's about vulgar and this his mind. Cat Williams. He came back recently too, also after a little bit of a hiatus. He did a special on Netflix, I think, a year ago. So his jokes on Joe Biden's hysterical. Joe Biden.
He was always great on the Comedy Central roasts.
Yes,
too.
he was.
Anyone that Cat Williams was on, I was just roaring.
No, he's hysterical. And I another guy that recently did a deep dive on his catalog again, just because I wanted to. Yeah, he's Cat Williams is number 5. His heyday was like what, mid 2000s. You think his peak? Yeah. So yeah, Cat Williams number 5. All right, number 4, DJ.
Number 4, man, the crown king of just thoughtful, intelligent comedy, George Carlin. This guy, it's still relevant today. A lot of his thought processes, a lot of the things that he was talking about 25, 30 years ago, you can directly relate to today's world and plug it right in. Obviously being in the Bill and Ted movies was big for me back in the day because I love those things. But his comedy is one of the ones where I just genuinely laugh out loud at, and some of his thought processes and beliefs shaped where I was in my life at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, for you, number
4? 4, I got Robin Williams for all the reasons DJ said earlier.
Yeah,
and he was a personal favorite of mine. And again, like he's one of those people just like energy, right? So some performers they have that kind of just crazy energy about them, and like he brought that just every time if he was on stage, if he was in a movie, everything he did.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. We got a first match because I also had George Carlin before as well.
Awesome.
He's the one I think in the last 20 years that's made the biggest leap, because I didn't know much about George Carlin until the last 15 years. Especially in the last 10 years, and being a big political honk as I am.
Yeah. And
some of the things he said years ago in the 70s and the 80s, and the relevancy of those clips today, he's made the biggest jump for me. I used to say, I'm not racist, but the only thing I was racist about growing up as a kid was comedy. I always leaned towards black comedians because I can relate to a lot of what they're saying.
Yeah.
As I got older, that's completely changed. George Carlin was probably the biggest like comedian for me that made me look at the world at large. Look at that, like, even in political context, like, yeah, both sides are fucked up, and yeah, we need to. And he told you the truth, and he told you unvarnished and unfiltered.
Yeah, he didn't lean left, he didn't lean right. He shot right down the center,
right,
and he let both sides have it.
Yeah, I loved it. And to this day, to me, I think of all the comedians on my list, having number 1, number 2, number 3 ahead of him, he's probably the one I probably lean on the most when it comes to political commentary, because even though he's been gone 15 years, every word he said, it still stands true today, if not more so today than it did back then.
Yep.
Almost like a prophet in a sense.
He saw where the world was going.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, number 3, DJ.
Number 3, 2, and 1, you could interchange these in any position, and I feel equally about them. I just lined them up this way. Now we're getting into personal preference.
Okay.
Number 3, Richard Pryor. Just, my God, Richard Pryor. Talk about fearless, genuinely funny energy, would joke about anything, and just did not care, and nothing was off limits. And I love that type of comedy. Like if you want to rip white people, rip white people. You want to rip yourselves, just lay it all out there. And he did.
Mm-hmm.
Just laid it out there for everyone to see and was absolutely brilliant. And a string of really good comedy movies as well. I think of The Toy, Brewster's Millions. That's just a couple off the top of my head. Moving was, for the longest time, I could quote that movie almost word for word. Richard Pryor, and again, influenced decades of comedians.
Oh, well, question.
Yeah. One of the funniest bits ever was him and Chevy Chase thing from Saturday Night Live.
Well, and who can forget the work he did with Gene Wilder?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, all the movies he did with Gene Wilder, absolutely brilliant. And then, being, a writer for Blazing Saddles, because originally he was supposed to be cast as the sheriff, and Disney was the distributor of the film at the time. They're like, no. not him. But he stayed on as a consultant and a writer for some of the jokes, which is incredible.
Yeah, he was a genius. He was a genius, definitely. Number 3 for you, Rob?
Carlin, and because I feel like this. You take it. All right, so like basically the way I'm looking at it, like, okay, every black comedian is doing some piece of a Richard Pryor bit even now, and so a whole lot of white comedians are doing some type of George Carlin bit in some of their routine. They're kind of like the two kind of archetypes, I guess you could say. The way I'm looking at it. So I got him number 3 for all the reasons y'all mentioned, and not that they didn't have any overlapping material, right? I mean, but you can just kind of see the shades, for no pun intended.
Yeah.
But I mean, if y'all get what I'm saying here, just kind of the way people pattern themselves after people who came before them and all of that.
Yeah.
Let me just say that 2 through 4 for me can be interchangeable as well too. 2 through 4, like Carlin could be higher than 4 next week, but it is next week. Just saying. 3 for me though is Dave Chappelle. Everything you guys said, also, like I said, and to me, like when I first got into Chappelle years ago, the TV show got me. His stand-up didn't get me at first because his stand-up to me was too, well, not so much boring. It was also the delivery he did his jokes back. Even now, I guess back then I needed something more aggressive when I was younger, so I couldn't appreciate the style of Chappelle until I got older. And I think watching the show and seeing his stand-up on the show, how it flowed with the skits and stuff, it got me used to his style. And then as I got older, I started to understand his style, his commentary, and the whole nine. And to me, that's what sold for me. Is that okay? I guess I'm mature enough as a person to appreciate what he brought to the table, as not just as a TV star, but also as a stand-up guy as well too. And his commentary is excellent. Very genius, and as signs of Carlin too. Also very, very almost centrist in a sense. Very common sense like.
Yeah.
So Chappelle number 3 for me. All right, top 2, DJ. Kick it off.
My number 2 actually is my personal all-time favorite comedian, but I didn't rank him at number 1 because I'm trying to do a power rankings here. I'm a rock star at heart. Sam Kinison was the rock stars comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up rock stars comedian, absolutely fearless. This guy and his spiel on religion and just the way he looked at things in life shaped, 18 to 22-year-old me. Like it really did. It was everything that I believed at that point in time came from a lot of the stand-up that I watched at the time, and a lot of that really came from him. I know he had a very short career. He died very young. He was in the aforementioned Back to School for a brief cameo and a couple spots there. Absolutely knocked it out of the park with what little time he was given. I think had he lived longer, we would be having much more intensive discussions on the work of Sam Kinison today.
Yeah, I learned about him like years later, like years after he passed away.
His thoughts on religion and the thing, because he was a preacher. Before he was anything, he grew up in a I think a Southern Baptist family.
Yeah, I read about that.
Yeah. He was a preacher, and then he walked away from that, went to LA, did the comedy tours, in the clubs out there. And then first time I saw him was again on Dangerfields on HBO. And then he had the Sam Kinison Have You Seen Me Lately special on HBO, a couple years later where he had his full length set. And it was just watching him was just inspiring because he just got into what he was doing, the physicality of it all, the verbal, and just the way he engaged and looked at that crowd was just, he had him in the palm of his hand. And he was so natural at this, for a guy who seemingly didn't have that much of a background.
Yeah, you say the name of it's called Have You Seen Lately? Yeah, I found it right here on Apple Music. I'm going to listen to it tonight.
Yep.
I'm just tonight. I haven't ever heard it before. I'm going to listen to it tonight. Just his one called Story, Jim Baker. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Jim Baker. Okay.
You enjoy, my friend.
I'll give you some feedback on that after. Number 2 for you, Robbie.
Number 2, I got Pryor at number 2. Like I was saying about Carlin, like pretty much every black comedian who come after Richard Pryor takes something from Richard Pryor.
Okay.
He is the model for all of them. I mean, and look, they'll tell you, right? Like they're all trying to be, live up to his example, his legacy, whatever you want to call it. And look, he was, for all, the stuff y'all said, movies, TV, stand up, of course. That thing, like the thing, I don't know, did y'all see the thing he and Chevy Chase did on Saturday Night Live?
That I have not seen, or if I have, I've forgotten it.
It's been years.
Yeah, because basically, what's supposed to be like a job interview kind of thing, but they end up just like basically trading racial slurs, and they keep escalating, right? And so at the end, the big moment is gonna be when Chevy Chase says the N-word, right? That's gonna be the big moment, of course. So, but they're escalating and they're going up and going up and going up, and then Richard Pryor says honky. And Chevy Chase finally says it, and then Richard
my God!
Yeah, and then Richard Pryor says, "Dead honky." and look, I don't do it justice. It's out there on YouTube, but you guys,
I'll check it out. But it's SNL, right? SNL, you said?
Yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead. We have another match here. Also, I got Pryor number 2 as well for the same reason you just said too. Genius, influencer, you name it. And learn about him too, also through the years. Tortured soul, very tortured. So this is a story. It's his comedy was everything to him because I mean, when you listen to his comedy, that there's a lot of truth to what he was saying, man.
He laid it all out there on stage. Just everything, all his stuff, all his issues, all his things. He laid it all out there. He didn't hide nothing. Yeah,
I'm telling you, man. This is why it's one of the best like mediums to to ever have because of like a lot of what they say is a lot of truth to what they're saying.
Well, personally, you think about some of the best comedians in the world, they had to have been tortured souls to get away. Robin Williams, unfortunately.
Oh my, yeah.
We've got to be talking about ADHD, depression, things like that. We probably go down an entire psychology book with a lot of these folks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, Pryor's like right on the top of that list of those guys who tortured Rob Williams, Pryor, you name it. Sam Kinison, and with the religion aspect of it too, especially I can relate to as well. I totally get it. All right, we got to number 1. Who's number 1 for you, DJ?
Number 1 for me was Eddie Murphy for a variety of reasons. And saying Eddie Murphy was influenced by Richard Pryor is like saying that Hulk Hogan was influenced by God, his name just fell right out of my head. Rob, help me out.
Martino?
No,
Superstar
Billy Graham.
Okay, right.
It's he borrowed heavily from Richard Pryor, let's say. But when I first really started to dig into comedy after I was allowed to watch more adult humor, Eddie Murphy Raw and Eddie Murphy Delirious were on a constant loop in my VCR for months, if not years. And then even decades later, I would go back and watch them again. Just because Eddie was so genuinely funny and just had a genuine persona about him that while it was very derivative, it was still very much his own. And, he turned that into a brilliant movie career. It's obviously he's fallen out, here recently. Where I really became a fan of his was when I finally went back years later and watched a VHS DVD of his work on Saturday Night Live, because I missed his entire Saturday Night Live run.
Oh, he saved the show. He literally saved the show.
Sure did.
He did during that time period. But I had seen none of that until years later. And then I watched it. I'm like, holy crap, this is brilliant. This is good stuff. that he was a part of. So yeah, that's the biggest reason why Eddie Murphy landed at number one. But like I said, I had a hard time with 1 through 3 because I could very easily slot Kinnison or Pryor in the number one slot. And if you ask me again, like we said, in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm with you. Rob, who's number one for you?
Eddie Murphy. And look, I look at it this way: Richard Pryor is Dr. J, Eddie Murphy is Michael Jordan.
Okay.
Even the time, even the kind of the times line up right, because Pryor was big 70s, early 80s, and then just like Dr. J, and then Murphy and Michael Jordan blew up around the same time.
Yeah.
Like I said, Murphy saved Saturday Night Live. He was like 18, 19 years old, by the way, when he got on Saturday Night Live. And he saved the show.
Yeah, no question.
And so I'm looking this up now, but before he turned 29 years old, this is what everything did before 29 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Delirious, 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop, Golden Child, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Raw, Coming to America, Harlem Nights, all before he turned 29 years old.
Amazing.
That's why if we're going by power rankings, I had to put Eddie Murphy at the top.
Yes. Because he did a sketch show again. He saved Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
He wasn't just on the show. Okay.
Yeah.
He did the stand-up specials. Two of the biggest stand-up specials ever. And then one of them, Raw was played in movie theaters.
Yep.
All those movies, and then even now, like a couple of years ago, he did the Dolomite biography, and it was outstanding. And he played Dolomite, in the movie, and I think it's on Netflix. And even so, he's not making the big hit movies like he used to, but he's still an outstanding comedic actor. And I highly recommend that movie for him and Wesley Snipes is in it. He's hilarious in that movie too. So look, if you look at just whole career, that you get when he started, again, like 18, 19 years old. And he had that run of movies before he turned 30. And then he did, then he went into family friendly movies and other things. And it's funny because, I don't think he's actually done a stand up thing in a couple of decades. And, people wanted him to come back and do it. And
it's Raw.
Yeah. And he's just like, and he's one of those people, like what he did stands on its own and he doesn't have to come back.
Nope.
And those two comedy specials are timeless. You rank it right up there.
Don't get me started on those two.
What was the big Richard Pryor one that he did?
Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
Live at the Sunset Strip. Yeah. Carlin from Carnegie Hall.
Right.
It stands right next to all of those.
Yeah.
Well, right now you'll get a clean sweep here. Eddie number one for me with a bullet. Eddie's not only my favorite comedian, he's my favorite actor of all time. Delirious is my favorite stand of all time. It's 40 years old this year. It still stands the test of time.
Wow.
40 years old. 83 came out. August 83. Still stands the test of time, in my opinion. Obviously, it's dated because of the material, obviously, but in terms of the impact and just it's still felt. We look my favorite movies of all time. Mostly Eddie Murphy movies. Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2. Coming to America. Golden Child. Trading Places. 48 Hours. Hell, even this 90s stuff gets slept on.
I enjoyed Boomerang.
I love Boomerang. I love Boomerang.
On the hill, the Boomerang was a
Boomerang. Boomerang was a great movie, and it got shit on by movie critics because he made it basically. It was a black centered movie.
Yeah,
the characters and the stories and all of that, and a lot of critics didn't like it because, to be blunt, he didn't. Didn't have any white people in it. Okay,
I think there was one white dude in the whole movie, wasn't there?
Yeah, and that kind of, and it wasn't your typical, comedy with an all black cast. It wasn't like the stuff that Richard Pryor did in the 70s or whatever. It wasn't like it wasn't like that type of movie. And a lot of just movie critics really they didn't know how to take that, and so they crapped on it.
Eddie Murphy is the greatest cast member in SNL history. It's not an argument. I remember when they did the 40th anniversary back in 2015. It was a big debate on social media on my Facebook, and there were people. Most people agreed with me, but some people will say, "Well, maybe Adam Sandler was." No. Eddie had that locks up. Eddie was so big in the 80s that it was hard to sustain that. His 90s work. If his 80s work didn't exist, his 90s work would be huge, would be bigger. But because he was so big in the 80s, Coming to America was so big in the 80s, Beverly Hills Cop was so big in the 80s, you name it. His 90s work gets a little slept on because of the fact that he was so big. It's hard to sustain that, in terms of like perception, of course. But Night Professor was great. I love The Strange Gentleman, of course. Boomerang, as you said, is a fantastic movie. Yeah, I mean Eddie Murphy was arguably the biggest celebrity in the country in the 80s.
Yeah,
absolutely.
In the like mid 80s, yes.
Yeah, it was either Michael Jackson or Eddie Murphy.
Yeah,
you name it.
And, I mean, like his 80s is like basically like Wilt Chamberlain, like and his 80s stuff was built with the 76ers, and then his 90s stuff was built with the Lakers, where Wilt was quote unquote not as good, but he still did a whole lot of work.
Yeah, you know what we should do one day? We should do a top 10 Eddie Murphy movies ranking. Maybe top 5. I don't know, 10 or 5. I don't know. We want a number. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we all agree. What I noticed on our list too, also especially, is that we came with when we got to the top 5, was for the most part close to each other, the same names.
Yeah, the same 4 people kind of gravitated in the top 5.
Right.
And honestly, I mean, Eddie would be number 1 no matter when I do this list for me, probably.
For me also.
The other 4 or 5 in the top 5 are
that's how I was saying. The 2 through 4 for me would be fluid, would be interchangeable. But number 1 is number 1 for me, no matter what. Because my favorite comedian, my favorite actor, you name it, boom, 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 boom. And are there any? If I let you guys go, are there any other names on the list that you would put on now that you didn't mention here? Because I got one name.
Because for me, I try to do power rankings like DJ said, but if we're talking personal favorites, Bernie Mac.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of my all-time personal favorite comedians, and unfortunately, he's gone too soon. But
yes,
I love Bernie Mac.
What about you, DJ? Anybody else that you would have probably?
There's one I would throw on here, and of course, because I'm talking now, his name, Jeff Dunham. Jeff Dunham, I've had the play. He's the only stand-up comedian I've ever seen live. My girlfriend bought tickets for us about 6-7 years ago. We took her son for his birthday. Genuinely funny guy. Like, he's got the puppets, and the puppets are his gimmick, and the puppets are hilarious, and he's made some timeless stuff with that. But his because he does about maybe 20 minutes of just stand-up before he brings the puppets out, and his stand-up's genuinely funny. And I was surprised by that because I expected him to kind of be a one-trick pony. I was like, okay, let's get to the puppets and get it over with. But I'm like, no, he's actually really, really thoughtful and funny. One sidebar, because I was thinking of the list that this entire discussion stemmed from, and I want to get you guys' feelings on this. Jerry Seinfeld was on that list of top 10. And that was the first name on that list I would have jettisoned for the simple reason of when I go back to, again, Dangerfields. I first saw him on HBO on Dangerfields, and I thought he was the worst comedian on the show.
Ooh.
Like, nothing about him was funny. Like, I didn't even laugh at anything he talked about. And then, like, half a dozen years later, he's on the number 1 sitcom TV show in the country in Seinfeld. And I'm like, and it was built around his stand-up comedy. And I'm like, how the fuck did this happen? This guy's not even funny.
Were you a Seinfeld fan, though?
No.
I'm not either.
I've never watched more than a handful of episodes. There's a podcast on the Chairshot Radio Network, the DWI podcast, and for a while I was guest hosting on there, and they were going through episode by episode, season by season, so I had to watch a couple full episodes just so I could engage in the discussion. But I've probably spent more time talking about Seinfeld than I ever spent watching it. I think Curb Your Enthusiasm by Larry David was much funnier than Seinfeld ever was.
Without question.
Much funnier than Seinfeld ever was.
Oh, my God.
Without question. It's not even close. Seinfeld never grabbed me, number 1, because of the fact that I'm not saying Jerry's not funny. It's just not my type of funny, personally. The show itself, there's no storyline to it. So, to me, same way I love wrestling. Storyline.
Right.
And you grab me with something that's going to intangible, going to keep me on long term, and that's why I never got into Seinfeld. Whereas Curb is more of a skit-ish show.
Yes.
So that makes more sense to what they do there. But yeah, the only name that I considered, I just thought about as I was doing this, like literally as we're doing the show, was Bill Burr.
No, I love Bill Burr. Bill Burr's great.
Okay.
And I think his podcast is what really took over me. He's the first like podcast comedian, whatever to call it, that's like really taken the medium and really made it, his own, to the point where like I listen to this every week, the whole nine, and he's just naturally funny. He gets it, cultural also too, the whole nine. Another one too, also that not my top 10, but he's really, really funny. He doesn't get a lot of mainstream love though. Godfrey. Godfrey's funny as hell too. You see him a lot on the VH1 countdown shows all the time too.
Yeah.
He's really funny though, naturally. So Godfrey's another one that I never considered him in my top 10, but someone I did want to make mention of. Someone that's really, really funny.
Because like with Jerry Seinfeld, like I've watched some of it, but to me, like the other three are more funny characters than he is.
Yeah.
Because George Costanza is one of like the funniest TV characters of all time.
Yeah.
And,
Wait, are you a fan of that show, Rob?
I wouldn't call myself a fan. I watched some of it, recently, just because I never watched it really when it was on. So I started watching it just out of curiosity. But because I watched the whole run of Curb Your Enthusiasm all the way through, and that is
that show's laugh out loud hilarious.
Yes, I mean, that is easily one of the best comedy shows of all time. It might be the funniest one ever. I mean,
yeah.
But to me, Jerry's the least funny person out of the four of them. Like the other three all have just funnier storylines and funnier bits and everything.
Yeah.
Well, Kramer was really good at the physical comedy.
Yes.
Like the physical stuff, the stuff he did with his body is really good.
Right, but that show never grabbed me. I tried to get into it, but once I realized there was no storyline attached, I was like, okay, well, I can't watch this. I'm out.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, plug away what you want to plug.
Rob?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll plug my own stuff first. I have my own podcast, the Rob the Genius podcast. I, new episodes every 2 weeks, basically.
You told me today, didn't you?
Yes, I did. And
I got a notification from my phone today. I was like, oh, Rob dropped no one today.
Yeah. And and of course, and then I have my website, robthegenius.com. I write reviews of movies and wrestling shows and other things. And I think that's it for me personally. And I'll let DJ plug the show.
All right. Basically, aside from podcast guest host for hire, I'm part of the Mindless Wrestling podcast with Rob and our friend Jason. We're part of the Chairshot Radio Network. You can find me on Twitter at The Mindless Pod. Yeah,
great show as always, man. Great show. You guys every Friday you guys put out now.
We actually, they upload us on Saturday. We were
usually Saturdays now.
Yeah, we got bumped to Saturdays. They had a changing of the shifts, and we got bumped to Saturdays. Now it was Friday for a while.
Oh, okay. But good job, guys. That's awesome.
Thank you.